you find that, yes, superheroes in the real world are kind of funny. They're also kind of scary. Because actually a person dressing in a mask and going around beating up criminals is a vigilante psychopath. That's what Batman is, in essence. And we came up with the character of Rorschach as a way of exploring what that Batman-type driven, vengeance-fueled vigilante would be like in the real world. And the short answer is a nutcase.
What microphone are you using, Gareth? Because you sound brilliant.
Thank you. I would just be quite happy and proud to say that is a brilliant microphone. Oh, that must be on the headset. I was going to say it's on the computer, but it's obviously the Sennheiser microphone.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. How about that? Well, they're the same earphones I've got on. Phil, if you want to borrow these, mate, because your sound is dog shit.
Oh, is it?
No,
Well,
it's okay.
I'm doing it off my phone. I've got the microphone, but then I'd have to get the laptop out, and you only ever send it to me via Facebook.
You're not
And
even trying, are you? You don't even care.
Well, because you don't send it to me
Third
via
episode
email.
and you've lost interest.
Hang on, what was the first
I've got
one?
the book and everything. Do androids dream of electric sheep?
That's right. And then the second one was what?
The girl with the dragon tattoo.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Different themes, different movies,
Yeah.
different
Well,
genres.
actually, they kind of bleed into each other a little bit. Especially, I think the Stephen K. Dick book and this one. There's not much.
Philip
to take
K.
away,
Dick.
really.
Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, what did I say?
Stephen
Philip
K.
the
Dick.
Dick.
I don't know why. Stephen the
Stephen
Dick?
King. Stephen King. The Dick.
Must be
Stephen the
that.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's go for
Go
a
on,
proper
then. You
start,
can
shall we?
intro them. Phil, take it away, Phil. Take it away.
Okay. Welcome to the Adapted to Screen podcast with me, Philip McCulloch,
Myself, Ritchie.
and our very special guest, actor, presenter, and comedian Gareth Berliner.
Hello.
How are you, Gareth?
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good here in Blighty, in lockdown, in Birmingham. Brilliant. I'm doing brilliant. I thought Ritchie was very wealthy until I realised that he had used green screen to give himself.
You can't tell people that.
Brilliant
People
background.
need to think I am wealthy.
Sorry. Ritchie is wealthy, and I love his home environment. His library is amazing.
I think Richie's
awful start.
Richie's going for the eccentric billionaire theme.
Did Ritchie just try and claim that this was an awful start after the conversation we just had about a minute before you pushed record?
I don't know what you're on about.
But that's one for the outtakes, I think.
Yes.
On today's episode, we are talking about Alan Moore's fantastic Watchmen. Is that the right way around? Watchmen there.
Watchmen.
Which
It'd be a
was
pretty boring. Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, that would be a pretty boring book if it was just Watchman. Just one bloke, that's it.
Like some bloke watching a bloke on suicide watch in his prison cell. Yeah. This was brought to us by our guest Gareth, which was you suggested that we looked at this in this episode. Any particular reason why you brought this book?
Yeah. Do you want the truth or do you want an embellishment?
Whichever one you feel.
Okay, so the truth is, I was being incredibly lazy, and having read the book of The Watchmen every year for about 20 odd years, I thought, well, I know the book. That means I won't have to reread the book. All I should have to do really is watch the film. So I had the advantage over you two of not having to read a very thick graphic novel, and just sat this afternoon and watched a nearly 3-hour film I haven't seen in a while. It was great.
Oh, you big lazy knacker. So for those of you who are new, or even those of you who listened before, what we do, we read a book and then we go and watch the film version, and we decide, or we have a debate about what the differences were, what was good, what was bad, and what was indifferent. So Ritchie, from the other two books that we've already read, what differences did you take from this book to the other two that we've already read?
Completely different fucking story, Philip.
That's Well, I know that, but I mean, like styles of writing, as an example.
Oh well, one's a comic for a start, and the rest of the other two in books. It's completely different. There's less narrative, which I thought I wasn't gonna like, but I did like it because even though the pictures are put there for you, I found I still had to use my imagination because of the lack of narrative. But because the pictures are there, that you didn't need that narrative because it helped push it along. I've never read a graphic novel before. In all fairness, I didn't read this graphic novel either because I'm lazy, and I watched the dramatized version on YouTube. It's
that's still the right. They're using all the words from the book, right? You still
it's still word for word, and it's still the same pictures, but the pictures it's like a motion graphic novel.
Motion graphic, motion, comic book novel.
I just couldn't be asked to. I basically had someone read it to me. Is what happened. So, which is what I do with all the books. I listen to audio books while Philip reads them. So.
That's honest, and you're obviously better at multitasking than Phil.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that Ritchie's at work and I'm on furlough, so I might as well read rather than sit still and listen.
I don't sit still and listen. I have to work away and listen.
Me, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you could get off your fat arse and go for a walk or something, but that's fine.
That's true. Yeah, I'll bump into a lamppost, though, wouldn't I?
So engrossed.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, Gareth, when was I know that you've just talked about you read it once a year or once every couple of years or a couple of times a year. When was the first time that you actually picked up Watchmen, and had you read Alan Moore books previously?
No, I hadn't read any Alan Moore. I picked it up the year it came out for sale in the shops. And I knew that it was coming. I think I'd read about that it was coming. And I'm a massive comic book fan anyway. I'm not like an Alan Moore hound. I'm not nuts for Alan Moore. And in fact, I think I saw The League of Gentlemen as a film before I then went back and looked at the graphic novel because I knew I'd probably enjoy that more. But I have loved this book since it came out. And I think, for me, it was the same kind of thing as like Back to the Future. When I saw that for the first time, that I fell in love with cinema. I was like 11, and Back to the Future was the film that just turned me on to film. I think this was the comic book, although I'd read like Dark Knight Returns and things like that. I think this was the first graphic novel that really turned me on to what the art form could do, what it could do, and how heavy it could be.
Interesting. So the one thing we haven't done, which I'll just quickly throw in, was a little bit of blurb about Alan Moore. I don't have very much. I'll just read what's on the back of the book. Alan Moore is perhaps the most acclaimed writer in the graphic story medium, having garnered many awards for his work such as Watchmen, V for Vendetta, From Hell, Miracle Men, and Swamp Thing. He is the mastermind behind the entire America's Best comic line, writing Tom Strong, Top 10, and Tomorrow's Stories, as well as Promethea. As one of the major innovators of comics in the 80s, he's influenced a generation of comic creators. He resides in Central England, which I think is a quotation. Central England means Northampton.
Yeah, he's I actually, when you listed what he'd written, I've probably read a lot more than I realise of Alan Moore. And I also forget sometimes that he wrote a lot of storylines in comic books that you read anyway. You just don't realise all the time you're reading an Alan Moore. But this, I think this book's incredible. And if whoever's listening, it's not just a graphic novel, because what I think's amazing about it and where I think it was groundbreaking was the blend between graphic novel at points to just solid literature. So when you're talking about Hollis, one of the characters, Hollis Mason in the book, who was the original Night Owl, we get a lot of his backstory in an excerpt from his memoir that they've printed, or that Alan Moore wrote 3-4 pages of. That's what always blew my mind in the book, was there was all this extra layered detail that kind of broke away from the book, even as well the comic. There's a comic book within the book
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that you read the panels of and get lost in. So it's also, I think, a comic book about comic books, very much.
Oh yeah,
Love
most
it.
definitely. Richie, what did you take from your first view of the graphic novel?
As I said, it's the first time I've done a graphic novel. I've always wanted to. I've always liked the idea, just never got around to it. And I think this was probably the perfect start, for the perfect opening into the world of graphic novels, because it is a masterpiece from what I can tell. I can't compare it amongst anything else, but from what I've read, it does come across like a masterpiece. And you do appreciate the art within. I mean, book writing and not writing a novel is an art, but this is with the graphics and everything. It's like art within the art, and then you're saying that there's a comic book within the comic books. You've got art within the art within the art, and the whole story was. I'm not sure when it was wrote, but from what I can tell, it was quite innovative. The way that he
Massively.
depicted superheroes as being flawed characters. I think up until then, you didn't have that. You had like Superman, this perfect person. You had perfect superheroes, whereas this showed the proper humanity in the characters.
I think it was 1985, wasn't it, when it was?
I think it's 85.
Released. Yeah.
So I was hold on, let me just think. 82. I was about 13. I was 13.
Oh, okay.
Hell. Yeah, I was a kid.
I say usually when Ritchie hosts, because he always does, he gives a brief overview of the story. So Gareth, would you give us a brief overview of Watchmen? Just a very brief.
The film or the book?
No, just the book. It's just
the book.
Yeah, just what it's about.
A very brief overview is: imagine if Nixon had never been caught out for Watergate, so he stays as president, and a group of people kind of end up deciding, because the world is a violent and dark place, to don costumes and fight crime, just like in the comic books. The difference running throughout the book is that in a comic book, in an original comic book back in the day, you would never get an idea of the real lives that these people might be living. In the Watchmen, it's about that they're dealing with abusive backgrounds or being alcoholics, or, they're flawed characters. As Ritchie said, they're working through stuff, and the essence is there's kind of a supervillain or a villain involved. There's a mystery, and it's all leading to a catastrophically huge event. That's probably the best way without giving too much away.
That's cool. Well, don't worry about giving too much away, because we're going to talk about all of that.
Oh, yeah, I forget, yeah. But probably best that I don't go into the entire detail.
Yeah, cool. No, so I think we start off. I know we've discussed it. We've discussed most of the work already, but we start off in the book with two policemen investigating a murder, which through the conversation of the policeman, we learn that the man who was killed was a pretty hard, tough guy, and whoever had killed him must have been pretty hard and tough himself. Which, when they leave, I think there's narration. There is obviously it's a bit weird to figure out the narration in a graphic novel, because you're just reading, if you know what I mean. But what comes from that is Rorschach, who's got a mask on. He uses a grapple hook. He goes in and does his own investigation, revealing that this man was a costumed hero, and really that's where it starts, and that's where like the mystery's peaked within like a minute.
Well, it's interesting because when we're talking about the narration, like you said, it's not easy. I think reading a graphic novel is an entirely different language to reading a film. And so, what's happened over the last few years is films have begun to take, I think a lot more so in the last 20, 30 years, films have begun to take a lot more of the techniques from comic books, which means a story can be non-linear. You could start off at the end, you can go back to the middle, you can explain. And I know we do that in literature, but film it's only with like Memento, and what's his name? I've forgotten the director, Christopher Nolan. But it's only with people like that we've really started to push the boundary about how our story is told rather than just chronologically. And what's amazing in Watchmen is there's a lot of use of crossing backwards and forwards through time. And similar devices to the movies. Like one thing I like about the adaptation is that when we get to the movie version, twice I think they use the same like literally they've nicked just a nice device from the graphic novel where they have a close-up on a picture in a frame, a flash going off, and then we flash back to when the picture was taken.
Yeah, which is always a bit cool. Yeah. I did like that element in there.
But what I was going to say about I went off where I wanted to go. But the narration, what you were saying about Rorschach's narration, is that's also he's narrating his journal,
Of course,
I think
yes. Yes.
and that's a huge part of it. Sorry, I'm just going to go off.
No.
I'm excited by
that's
it.
Cool. Yeah, and then we kind of follow Rorschach. For the first, probably not. I don't think for the whole of the first chapter, but for a large portion of the beginning, where he talks about he talks about things like Mothman, who ended up in the nut house, and there was a few people who were already gone, and the people who were left, and he was making a list of who it could have been. So who was killed? The comedian. I'm going to find out. I've got a suspect list of 4 or 5 people. I think we're introduced then to the night owl and the old night owl. They're having a drink, aren't they? Chatting about old times. And what I liked about, obviously we're still talking about the novel, really. What I liked about that was when he left, the sign on the gate said, "We fix obsolete cars" or something.
Oh yeah. No, I know exactly.
Yeah, which I thought was like that was obviously like touching on the retired night owl. Like he was obsolete, or he was.
It's really interesting that you noticed it, because actually when I was watching the film today, so I haven't looked back at my graphic novel because I've just read it enough. So I'd forgotten, and when I watched the film, I'd forgotten that they use exactly the same sign as they come out of that scene between the two of them. But actually, interestingly, I think it's talking about both of them, because they're both broken men.
True. Yeah, but I think, from my point of view, at the start,
old Jalopies.
Well, you don't know that the current night owl is really. You obviously get that the old night owl is because he talks about when I was doing it, when you took over. So you don't have that thought that the current night owl is past it just at that point. But most definitely. Right. Ritchie, what differences did you notice from this point in the book and the film, if any?
What point?
The point where Rorschach had gone into the apartment, and then both of the night owls were having a chat about being old. So we're only about 10 minutes into the film at the moment.
Yeah. And then the one out, he leaves, and yeah.
Well, I mean,
did Rorschach turn up at the apartment?
Yeah, afterwards. Yeah, he goes home and Rorschach's already there eating his beans.
Oh God, yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah.
But I think the only difference so far was they actually showed the attack in the film.
Well, I actually followed the film with the graphic novel, because I've got the book as well, and they kept a lot of it word for word to the novel, even in the film. I noticed the obviously some scenes taken away, but they did follow it quite well. When you compare it,
very little was taken away.
Yeah, when you compare it to most films, when they adapt from a novel, it's like last time with the girl with the dragon tattoo, they were chalk and cheese. They were completely different. It was different, and I don't think it was as as good as the novel, but they did try to keep it as close as they could with the time frame that they had, and I think they did a bloody good job of it as well, especially with the atmosphere that they managed to keep. And
I think for a 2.5 hour film, the important bits, like for instance, obviously in the novel, the comic book within the comic book, you don't need that. With the autobiography bits, you don't need that. But like little tiny bits, like okay, so Rorschach didn't go beating people up like in the pub the first time. Missed that bit. I don't really need that. But they missed so little out that you can't even tell. Like you can't even tell there's anything different. Which is actually funny because I say a bit about Alan Moore. Obviously, he'd done From Hell and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and in an article that I read, he was obviously asked if he wanted to sell the rights for, and he said, "Well, it's money for old rope. I've already written it. You can go and make it." Obviously, as probably every other author didn't like what was produced, got really cross, but still managed to bring himself to sell Watchmen. But then he, when he was selling these other properties, i.e. Watchmen, said he do, because if you notice at the credits, it says, and I forget the chap's name, what is it, Dave Gibbons, it says co-written by Dave Gibbons. It doesn't say Alan Moore. Alan Moore had his name removed from anything else that he sold, which I think is quite funny, because if he would have watched that film, he would have gone, that's exactly what I did. That's word for word, screen for screen, scene for scene. Exactly. So he must have loved that. He must have.
But I think I understand, because I'm so ingrained and enthralled by and connected to the graphic novel for such a long time. I think there is a massive difference. I think you can't see it at surface level. But what the graphic novel has the power to do by comparison is, like in the graphic novel, we don't revel in the violence. It's always paused, right? Because we always see it in a still frame. There's no real movement in the image. So some of the violence, we're often left to paint the rest of the picture of that scene ourselves. Like, so later in the book, he beats up, in the film, he beats up Moloch, the baddie or whatever, and he's hacking away with the axe. And that's like one panel that suggests that in the graphic novel. And so I think what's interesting is the impact of the end of the graphic novel is kind of silent, full-page panels, whereas the rest of the book's been like gridded, like nine panels or whatever. But the film has been violent all the way through, to the point of like enjoying it. I mean, the prison corridor and the cell scene, like you're meant to kind of enjoy, like, yeah, fucking. But these are meant to be damaged people who shouldn't be beaten. Like, they're not authorized to be beating people or anything. It's just
they're not authorized.
Well, you know what I mean. Like I just think it's really interesting that the violence at the end of the book, the terrible catastrophe that happened, is really hits home when you read the book from beginning to end. I think because you haven't sat in the violence.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to the end.
At the end. Sorry.
This is the thing you discover with not just graphic novels, with books. The reason we love the books more than the films and the graphic novel is, even though the graphic novel paints pictures for you and it gives you the stills, like you say, half of it you have to paint yourself. So you paint that picture, you're painting it your way, whereas the film, it's painting everything for you, and it's painting it in the director's way. And you've already read the novel, and you've already painted the picture that you want. So when you watch the film, it's like, no, that's not the way I see it. That's not the way I want it.
Although I'd say what is nice is if you were reading the book without voices in your head for the characters, it gives you a bunch of voices for the characters once you've watched the film, and it gives you nice sound effects for like Manhattan jumping. I tell you what I do love. I feel like what the film does is it freely picks kind of the moments it wants to perfectly honour the graphic novel, but it doesn't do it all the way through. And where it does do it that I love is when it does the origin of Dr. Manhattan, which I think is darker again, I feel like, in the graphic novel, because you're reading it and because you're left to really ponder his words. When they do that sequence in the film, it's like a 10-minute narrated sequence, and he has a really great voice. You know, if you're going to listen to someone, like, the piece of music underneath it and his voice just takes you on this really magical journey into his origin. And I think the book does that. And that's one place, like, I love the film. I used to listen to that bit of audio sometimes as I was going to sleep, because I just thought, just had this really nice quality.
Well, it's funny you bring up Dr. Manhattan, because that kind of picks up to where we were just going through the book there. Well, the book and the film, I suppose. He goes and visits the Night Owl. Rorschach is eating his beans. He tells him what's happened. He tells him who he thinks or who's on the list. And then he goes and sees Manhattan, goes and breaks into the government facility, which seemed very easy to do. I was quite worried. And we meet Dr. Manhattan, who's this giant blue man, which obviously in the film it's a little bit different, because they kind of introduce him really, really early. I think it's like, you know, Manhattan is during the at the very start, it's on the talk show, going, no, we won't get attacked because we've got Manhattan. But obviously that's not the case in the book. I reading through, I'm like, who is this Manhattan? Like, did he have some kind of Bruce Banner issue where he gets trapped and then screams? And like, kind of when I got to that bit of the book, I was like, that's exactly how I imagined it to be. Yeah. Like, but
I also think that's Alan Moore engaging a classic comic book trope. Like, it's such a classic fucking comic book thing of, like, you know, like when I was a kid, I identify as disabled. I got a health condition, an impairment. When I was a kid, I remember whenever I had an MRI scan, I don't know if you've ever had one of them. It's like this, it's a huge machine that you get in and you're like the center of a donut, like you just lay in it. And I used to dream that, like, maybe if I was lucky, lightning would strike the machine and turn me into some kind of weird superhero. Never happened. But that bit's brilliant.
Either that or a wasp flew in just at the right time.
Yeah.
When they were when the rays were going off. Yeah.
Yeah, then I'd be BG.
very true. Very true. So he goes and visits Manhattan. Is it Silk Stalker 2?
Silk
Julia, June, Silk Spectre.
What's her name? Jupiter? No.
Yeah, Sally Jupiter.
Yeah, Sally Jupiter.
Sally Jupiter. He goes and sees those two. Manhattan's not fussed in the slightest. And I was enjoying Rorschach as a character up until this point. And in the book, obviously there's made mention of the comedian dying, and then there's made mention of his attempted rape on Sally's mom. And I can't remember exactly what Rorschach says, but he's like, oh, that misunderstanding. And she's like, how dare you say that's a misunderstanding? I was like, oh, I was quite liking Rorschach until he kind of dismissed an attempted rape as a misunderstanding. But obviously you see later on kind of the way he was brought up and dragged up, I suppose, and how he can just see that as a normal thing to say. And it's an everyday occurrence for him, so it's not a big deal, so to speak.
In the film, Rorschach came across to me like a poor man's Batman, with the voice and everything, it didn't feel at all like he did in the novel to me. I
would also counter with that he didn't have that big a part in the film compared to the book either. Yeah. Like, he didn't seem to be in it that much. It's like, I'm sure he was.
He was almost the main protagonist in the novel.
Yeah.
I think the other interesting thing in the film Rorschach compared to the book, right, is in the book, I'd say he's an average height character. If you look at him amongst the rest of the characters, he's about the same height. It's like 5'6", 5'8", something like that. In the film, they spend up until the point, like watching it today, it was just really interesting. I noticed it up until the point he gets caught and goes to prison. we always see him from an angle looking up or with no one else in the frame. So he always looks like this big, scary kind of Dark Knight, like Ritchie's saying. But actually, when we finally get him, and it's a really clever device because it's just like the graphic novel allowing you to see like what a damaged kid he was. You suddenly realise he's this tight, like in the film, he's a tiny man, like he's a 5-foot man who's really learned to be powerful because he's small and he's got to fight back. You know what I mean?
Joe Pesci syndrome.
Yeah, but it's interesting later, and I think this is the great writing of Alan Moore. Maybe this is why they messed around with kind of the size in the film, is that in the graphic novel, you know, he ends up beating up a little guy, a little person. And in the film they do that, as you know, obviously they follow that same line.
He runs. Oh yeah, he gets him in the toilet, doesn't he? So he runs off, and he follows him. Did I miss that in the graphic novel when they come to get him? Because obviously they don't know what he looks like. In the book, they're like, "Oh, well, don't actually know what this geezer looks like."
It's the same scene.
But then when he's going into, he goes, "I'll be back in a minute." Is he going to beat the geezer up? Because I think I kind of I didn't get that in the book.
Oh no, in the book I think it's much clearer that he must have killed the little guy. I think it's much clearer. Whereas okay. I think in the film they're just, you assume, you know.
Well, yeah. Well, that's only because the door's swinging, he's there, and then the blood comes out. But yeah, no, I didn't pick up that in the book. Maybe I was just reading and just kind of, you know, glazed over at that.
I've read the book ridiculous amounts of times, so I'm anal about this.
No. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing the point there. Sorry, where were we within the story? Because I think we got sidetracked again, didn't we?
Sorry, I'm really bad for that.
No, I apologise. No, it's quite all right.
My brain is all over the shop.
So he'd gone and visited. That's it. He'd visited Sally, and then he decided to leave there. I think Sally got a bit annoyed with the blue fella, and she went off for dinner with the owl.
The blue fella.
Story. The blue fella, the big Viagra pill. She went off with the owl for some dinner, chatted about old times, and then I think we forward a little bit. We forward a little bit on, and Manhattan's doing an interview, isn't he? Where I think this is where the plan, the villain's plan comes to point, because obviously the comedian's dead, and then. He gets rid of Manhattan by staging some people, making it sound like he's giving people cancer, and he just pops off to Mars. Just, I'm off. See you later.
Well, with the Joker, the comedian.
Yeah.
Funny, I should say Joker because that's where I was going with it. Was there some sort of a slight towards the Joker? Because in the novel, I noticed he had the. No, because it was in 1985. He didn't get the scar, did he, until the Dark Knight?
The Dark Knight.
But he did always have like the extra bits, along with the makeup and the extra smile.
It did seem like either a tip of the hat towards it or some sort of taking the piss out of it. Because Alan Moore comes across like that kind of person. He's not the kind of person that's going to follow trends and he'll take the piss out of the norm.
So I did some research, right, for this. Obviously, because
good lad.
And it's interesting. Well, it's interesting actually. If you want me to bore your audience to tears, but it is interesting. So he originally, Alan Moore originally wanted to base the characters on these characters from Charlton comics, and there were 6 characters. So basically, Rorschach was modelled on a character called the Question. Night Owl was on a character called Blue Beetle. I don't know if you know that character. Dr. Manhattan was meant to be Captain Atom. The comedian was meant to be someone called the Peacemaker. Ozymandias was meant to be Thunderbolt. And Silk Spectre was based on a character called Nightshade. But he wanted to be able to... He didn't want to be forced to stick to canon and like the comic book history of each character. So he just created characters where he could trash them, where they could have abusive pasts and be alcoholics and kill people and whatever. So yeah, that's a bit of the background and how come.
I don't think it would have been as successful as what it has been if it had gone with the original canon.
Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely not.
And I think it's interesting you pick up on that, Ritchie, the difference between the comedian and the Joker, because especially in the film, Night Owl was Batman. He just was Batman. His suit was Batman. He had all the gadgets Batman had. You probably had like the flawed kind of, not able to hold a relationship. Batman, like basically when Batman disappears in the final Batman film, and then he's seen in that cafe at the end. But you could imagine that he's just living in some flat with some beans in his cupboard, next to a car garage, just to be left alone and no one to know. But yeah, it's funny you picked up on that as well.
So where are we, Phil? Where do we go?
We're in Mars. Well, we're in Mars, and then obviously in the book we're on it. Indeed, we're on Mars. We're on Mars. We get the backstory to Dr. Manhattan, which we covered earlier on, and it's. I think the film does well just to like kind of not add extra boring bits. So he's in the interview, he gets confronted. And instead of disappearing everyone and then disappearing, he just disappears, which is a lot easier to do. I think the Mars structure, we don't see the full Mars structure until he takes Sally there, whereas obviously in the book, he's kind of plodding around Mars for a little bit longer than in the film. And then we're back on Earth. What's going on Earth? Sally and the owl reminiscing about the good old days. Rorschach's still out there looking. Oh, he goes and chats to Morlock, doesn't he, at this point, and discovers that the comedian's been at his house having a good cry because he's all like mental. And I think just skipping forward slightly, when Rorschach gets caught by the police, or when he goes there for the second time, that's the only time that he actually shows any kind of, that's like humanity. That's when he's like, oh no, I can't. And I don't know whether it is I can't get caught because I don't want to go to jail, because I'm quite sure, number one, he was quite happy to be in jail because he knew that he wasn't, because of what he does when he's in jail. So, so I'll just do that and that, and I'll get left alone. But he really didn't want to get caught. And I think that's the only time, maybe personality, maybe. Like his inner personality rather than his gruff exterior.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They give him a bit of that in the. They give him a couple of moments of humanity in the film. But if you look at the graphic novel as well, when he talks before the incident with the girl, the girl that gets kidnapped.
Oh yes. Yes.
Whenever Rorschach is talking before that incident, his speech bubble, comic books do this kind of stuff a lot to kind of create an effect. His speech bubbles are always solid. They're just a solid bubble of speech. After that incident with the girl, everything is gruff now. Like all of his speech bubbles are like jagged edges because he has a breakdown that's his final snapping point. So I think that's why you're picking up on kind of that humanity. And then it's kind of gone, and he's just a dark,
It's very fucking observant. If you had to pick up on that, I could have read the book fucking 17,000 times. I'd never have noticed that.
But this is well, number one, that's what happens when you've overread it. But comic books as a way of like, in the same way the film gets the opportunity that the book does, and in that the film gives us music to create a vibe or a mood or help us understand some depth to a character. I would say, although the book can't do that, the other way the book does do that film can't, is literally as simple as stuff like thought bubbles and speech bubbles, and how the typeset and the typeface, it's the difference between me writing a message to you that says, "Hey Phil, how are you?" to me writing it all caps, "Hey Phil, how are you?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I get
they both have pluses and minuses, I think, between the two mediums.
He was on about Dr. Manhattan before, and he went on Mars. He fucked up on Earth, and he thought, "I'm going to go to Mars now. I've give all these people cancer, so I'm going to Mars. Now, if I was Dr. Manhattan and I could go anywhere in the universe, because he obviously can. I mean, he went there in a split second. Not Mars. It's like it's like the Sahara Desert, the planet. There's so many planets out there. They've probably got like thriving with life, and go somewhere nice. Not fucking Mars.
Well,
there's literally fuck all.
But maybe that's exactly.
Yeah,
right,
I think that's
it's
exactly.
Solitude, isn't it? Yeah, it's
And blank. I think it's a blank canvas as well. It's about an empty page for him because he knows everything. He's everywhere at once. He knows everything. Like, I don't know if either of you two watched the Watchmen TV series, which is set.
I haven't got around to it yet.
See, I saw this. I was going to watch it.
I think you should, after we've done this, when you have time, it's really worth you guys watching it, especially so close to reading the book and maybe having checked the film again, because I watched the series. So watching the film for you guys really helped kind of recontextualize the series. The series is really good and it's really clever, and it does things that honor the comic book in a way the film didn't. It really does.
It's got more time for a start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I think just then when you just mentioned Ritchie about Dr. Manhattan, obviously he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants, and I think it's very much got to be not got to be based on, but that's what Superman would be. That's what if
I don't know. I think if I was going to put the two together, I think Dr. Manhattan would tear the shit out of it. I mean, come on.
No, don't get me wrong.
Superman was killed by Batman, so Dr. Manhattan's all over him.
Spoiler alert. No, but what I'm saying is you've got the comedian who's like the Joker, you've got the Night Owl who's like Batman, you've got Dr. Manhattan who clearly has got nuclear power and can do almost anything and everything. That he's the world's greatest deterrent. He was pretty much Superman Superman plus another 5 levels, if you know what I mean. But so where were we with the story? Manhattan's gone.
You know, some people, they don't believe in God, and they say, I believe in the universe. That's how I imagine Dr. Manhattan. He's the universe.
He's everything.
He's everything. He knows everything.
Yeah.
He's the epitome of what it is to believe in, the universe.
Well,
and not a God.
My wife would say he's like pure he's like quantum mechanics and quantum theory. He's like everything. I'm having this conversation with you now at the same time as this is happening to us, as this is happening. And actually it's interesting because you can imagine Alan Moore when he was writing in it, because there's a lot of stuff now and a lot of TV shows we watch that's about kind of quantum mechanics, and Star Trek Discovery does loads of that. And, Alan Moore was groundbreaking. I love Dr. Manhattan's fascinating because it's the same thing. Like, are we in a matrix? Is this all real? How much control do we have? Anyway, back to the planet Mars and Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. No, to be honest, Gareth, I'm quite enjoying the breakdown and the discussion of Watchmen in general, because, I mean, as I said, there isn't very much difference between the graphic novel and the book. I mean, very, very little difference. So I think just having a chat and bringing it to life.
I mean, the graphic novel and the book are the same thing, Phil, to be honest.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, other than, there's, very, very few differences, at the start of the film. Oh, sorry, did I say the graphic novel and the book?
Yeah.
Yeah, what a plonker.
I do think there's a greater depth to the book than to the film, without question.
Or there's a greater depth to you? See, somebody who's simple-minded might not get it the same way you do, and they might enjoy the film better. Not to be offensive to stupid people, but there are a lot of them out there.
No, I'm with you, Richie, totally. And there will be people that would love this film more than the book, because I remember the first time I read the book, it was work. The first time I read it, because I wanted to read a graphic novel. That's why I like graphic novels. I don't really like books. I don't mind if it's like War and Peace turned into a graphic novel. I just would rather have some pretty pictures to make it easier for me. Do you know what I mean? And Watchmen, the first time you read it, it starts off as like quite a complicated comic book. That was fine. But then suddenly I would hit these half a dozen pages of real book. I'd be like, oh, fucking hell, I've got to read. Like, it's weird. Even though I was reading the comic book, I was like, oh, no pretty pictures.
Yeah.
No, and that's but that was I think that's the bone. Like that's kind of like the bonus that you get from the book, where if you don't get it in the film, but you don't really need it, you don't miss it. There's nothing groundbreaking in those bits that take anything away from the book. Oh God, I wished I would have put that bit in, because that's just kind of extra for you more than anything else. Excuse me. But there was lots of parts where I was waiting. I was like bits that I was waiting to see. Like for instance, when June and Daniel get attacked in the alleyway, I was like, I'm looking forward to seeing that bit in film. When Rorschach's in jail, and that was I don't think I've seen, like, it's a bit odd because, like, don't get me wrong, I've seen like graphic things before, but like I was trying to figure out how a human could do that to another human, because I haven't got any special powers.
But that's Rorschach. Are you talking about the prison scene? Are you talking about the dinner?
No. When the Night Owl and June go down the alley and get attacked by like those 20 blokes.
Yes,
and it's like he just snaps his arm, and it just but like that was still fun to watch. I mean, I've always wondered, if you was in a gang, right? If you was in a gang, let's say there's 15 of you, yeah, and you could be maybe not that up for attacking people, but still enough because you want some money, and you're in the gang, and it all works out well. Normally in the gang, like the second and the third hardest person go first, right? The leader kind of takes a step back. If you're, say, 10th hardest in this gang of 15, and you just watch the second and third get their arms snapped off.
I've already run away, Phil. I've already left.
Yeah, see you later. I'm off. I don't care.
I went. What makes you think I stuck around to watch guy number 2 and 3 get their arms broken? I'd gone at number 1.
That's what I'm saying. Just see you later. I'm gone. I'm not hanging around. But they always still seem to hang around to get beaten up, which is completely bizarre. But that was good. The prison scenes were good. One thing that in the book, when he throws the frying fat in the guy's face, it makes perfect sense. Right? Perfect sense. However, in real life, if you take a thing out of the fryer, there's no oil in it. It's got holes everywhere. You're just throwing air into the geezer's face.
That would really ruin the story.
I see what you mean. But it would kill the story, wouldn't it?
And if someone threw fat in your face, like in the film, you wouldn't stand there and go, "Oh!"
Actually, I can't remember.
Just like that. Oh, this is hurting.
Yeah, it is actually.
No.
It is.
But it was because it wasn't until I saw it visually, I was like, okay, if he got a load of chips thrown in his face that had fat in it, yeah. But like his face was covered in like chip fat. It's like it's colander. You're not getting anything in it. But it was still good. And that whole I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me.
That's what I was just thinking about.
Yeah, it really should. That apparently, and as I was reading, one of the senators in America have used that recently in the House, in the Senate or whatever they call it.
Yes, House of Representatives. They did.
Which is quite funny. Should have get all Rorschach on him. But yeah, so he's in what can be either. He wasn't even in solitary, was he? He was just in his cell on his own, and then
he's in general pop.
Yeah, and
as they say.
Gem Bob.
As they say. Are you wearing your Alcatraz top?
I am actually rather fittingly wearing my Alcatraz top.
So he's visited by it was in the film. It's a chap from Bad Grandpa, isn't it? Is it the guy who plays the elf in? Oh, sorry, Bad Santa. Sorry.
In the film that play because Bad Santa is Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, it's not the elf in that. No, that's a different character altogether. He's been in something that I've saw recently, but I don't know what the beef was. Whether Rorschach had put him in jail, he'd caught him for something and put him in jail. Had his 2 boys there, and they were going to give him a hard time and skip forward a little bit. And
it's gone the other way around.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a riot going on, and Rorschach knew what he was going to do. There's a riot going on, and Rorschach manages to tie a guy's hands to the thingy, which they waste no time in cutting the guy's arms off. So get out of my way, mate. See you later. But it was so calm when he's like, if they get in, I've got to fight these three guys. What am I going to do? Batter them before they even get in, which is bizarre. And then they end up. Well, so we haven't really even mentioned Ozymandias at all throughout this chat, have we? Because he's probably he's the most boring character.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the most boring character. Because he's really
he can suck a bag of dicks. I got no time for him.
I think he's like the cleverest, wealthiest man in the world. So, I mean, he probably is a bore. I suspect he is a bore. I expect he'd be really annoying to have dinner with. But it's pretty amazing. Like, when you look at his life, what he's doing, creating that kind of indoor Epcot Centre or whatever it is, you know what I mean? That he's got that place that's like Eden in Cornwall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mate, basically, they nicked that off of Alan Moore.
He's Elon Musk. It's who he is. He's Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, his plan, and let's just stick with the book for now, because obviously the film changes this a little bit. Am I right in thinking that, obviously throughout the whole book, like the doomsday clock is ticking down, or that's how we see it. They're at DEFCON 1, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 3. Russian forces are moving, this is going on, that's going on. Excuse me. And Ozymandias' plan is to send a space alien that he's created into the middle of New York to kill loads of people, to make everyone think there's an alien invasion, and then they all stop fighting and there's world peace.
He's going to sacrifice loads of people for the betterment of mankind. And if you look at the superhero movies of late, remind you of anyone? Thanos, maybe?
Yeah, no, but I mean, but that's the point, because when he details his plan, you're like, the guy's not actually mad. He's got a really good point. Just like Thanos. Thanos has got a really good. That's like
it's a good argument.
Yeah.
You have to be careful when you're taking sides of people like that, because you could also say, well, Hitler had a good point.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I thought that's where Ritchie was going to go. No, you're right, Ritchie. You are right. These are dangerous people. Don't follow Thanos. Don't follow Ozymandias.
But I think possibly both Ozymandias and Thanos were doing it indiscriminately, where I think Hitler was maybe targeting
very purposely and only one or two groups. Yeah,
he was in your face with it, being all extravagant on the TV, giving it all this. Whereas Ozzy, he's just doing it all on the down low.
And in the book, please do remind me, in the book, when he sends the space alien down, how does the alien get destroyed? Is it Manhattan? Does Manhattan come and kill it?
No, it doesn't. It's like it's dead. It's dead. It's like a creature that transported onto the Earth in various locations, but they're dead. It's just a dead, they kind of reference it. They very much give you the backstory on it in the Watchmen TV series. You get what the film didn't give you in a way. And so the whole idea is just that it will kill thousands of millions, but for the betterment of mankind, because now the Earth will assume we have an enemy out there, and that's what we need to be, because he couldn't make living aliens. He could only make this kind of body of this dead carcass alien that's transported. Maybe they died when they got here, but what if they come here and fix that problem? We better unite together.
And in the film, am I right in thinking they just blamed it on Manhattan?
Yeah, they use his energy. They use the same energy as because Ozymandias or Adrian Veidt or whatever, he's worked out like Dr. Manhattan has helped him kind of make the same kind of energy that Dr. Manhattan uses, so he uses it against Dr. Manhattan.
That's probably the biggest diversion from the novel, in my opinion.
Because they say they've been working
completely different.
Yeah, they've been working together on a carbon neutral fuel or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's a blag, and I think that's one of the things that probably upset. Well, it is a blag. I think it's one of the things that upset Alan Moore more than anything, and it's really interesting because if you look at it in a comic book, much like animation, you can do anything, and there is no budget because you're drawing.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas in the film, I think the only reason the choice was made was budgetarily. How can we have a scene that looks like this huge, weird-looking, gloopy alien has killed millions? We either need an amazing CGI that costs us millions, or we need an amazing scene that costs us way too much. So let's cut that out and just make it, it's Dr. Manhattan. It's a bit annoying. Like, I would have loved to have seen them copy. I would have loved them to have done it the same, to have stuck with the book.
I mentioned Elon Musk earlier. He's a lot like the character Ozzy. And it's a big thing in the book with the electric cars, isn't it? Dr. Manhattan says in the future it'll be electric cars because of me, because of what I can do, my technology, and Ozzy uses that technology, and I think Elon Musk is the Antichrist.
But the question is, can Elon Musk catch a bullet?
No, but I don't buy that in the movie. I think I think they faked it in the movie and just gave him a prop bullet to hold. I don't think he really did that.
Oh, you reckon? Oh, fair. Maybe he caught it for real in the comic. So I mean,
felt more real in the comic.
I mean, that's pretty much it. Other than obviously June and is Daniel, isn't it? Who's the night owl? They go and visit. They go and visit her mom, the original.
She's hotter in the film.
Much. I mean,
couldn't knock one off over the graphic novel. Definitely knocked one off over the film.
But I mean, I think overall, other than those little tiny bits, it was more or less faithful to the film. The film was to the book. I think a lot more than the other two episodes that we've covered. I mean, obviously with the girl with the dragon tattoo, both films took liberties left, right, and centre when they didn't need to, and the same with Blade Runner. It was virtually a different film to the book completely. I
think there was a real problem for them with adapting this particular graphic novel, and I think that problem was because we've seen it since that adaptation with regard comic book movies. His comic book movies are like precious to people. I was one of those people. This book was precious to me for years before they made it. So I remember initially seeing this film and being disappointed in some respects. I liked seeing things remade, but I remember being disappointed. But I think that's the problem that this film has more than those others, I would assume, is they built a rod for their back. Because if you say you're adapting Alan Moore's Watchmen, it was so groundbreaking that if you'd have made it like different color scheme, you know what I mean? They had to, on some level, honor the original kind of book work, at least to quite a large degree. Otherwise, people wouldn't have watched it. You know, if they couldn't have seen.
Someone's probably gone. It's gonna cost us 120 million to get it anywhere near close. And if we don't have that money, there's no point in doing it, because otherwise you're going to end up with some like fraud Captain America TV show, you know what I mean, or like straight to TV movie. There's just no point.
Well, when it's done painfully, like, have you ever seen that Roger Corman Fantastic Four? You ever seen any clips from that?
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah. Terrible stuff.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I was just going to say, like, especially, like, I always enjoyed watching The Incredible Hulk, the TV show, and a couple of the TV movies they did, especially the Death of the Incredible Hulk, was really good. It was when they started putting like Thor and Daredevil in there, and he's like, "This, you've got £3 to spend, haven't you?" It's like, what you doing? Don't do it. But they did it. Sorry, Richard, you were saying.
I was gonna just mention how brave Alan Moore was. I don't think we realise what he did the time that he did it, 1985. Back then, most people wouldn't have been able to get away with some of the subject matter that he was touching on, especially the scene with the girl that was being eaten by the dog. Nobody would have dreamt of ever writing anything like that back then. Even horror films, in films back then, even now, the kids are going to be okay. Apart from it, you don't kill kids. And especially 1985.
And dogs as well. Most of the time, you don't kill a dog.
No.
If you ever see Independence Day, I remember I did a film degree and we had to do Independence Day. They decide that they'll kill the gay guy, but the dog's got to live. It's the funniest thing in the world. So you watch, there's a gay character and we see him get killed off and the dog is also heading for the same trouble, but gets saved because it's like, no, we mustn't kill the dog, not the dog.
Yes, that's a really
that was
good point you bring up there,
as well.
Richie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point you bring up there. Yeah, you don't kill dogs and you don't kill kids, and you did both.
He did it all in one go. No fucking about.
But you're right. He's a pioneer. You're right, Ritchie. Like he was, and also like this book was the first. I believe it was the first graphic novel to be on Times or the New York Times bestseller list. So it was the graphic, like without Watchmen, I mean, it would have happened eventually, maybe, but Watchmen made kind of graphic novels, which essentially are collected comic books in one volume. That got them on the bookshelf so you could walk into Smith's and go to a section and buy, Superman, Batman, 150 pages of graphic novel or whatever. Like, so he's amazing, I think.
He inspired, I didn't realise it until I read the novel, but he must have heavily inspired one of my favourite TV series of all time. That's the Misfits.
Okay.
I don't know if you've... They're like regular people, superheroes. Obviously, these guys have real power. Oh, it is amazing. It's one of the best TV series ever.
Have you watched, Richie, have you seen The Boys?
I've seen the first season. That I'd imagine is also heavily inspired by Watchmen.
I would have thought you would dig it because it's based on a graphic novel, but again, that graphic novel was inspired by The Watchmen,
Yeah, I need to watch the second season. I haven't got around to it yet.
It's good, man. It's good.
Yeah,
I'm jealous of. I'm jealous of you, Richie, because you haven't seen it yet, so you've still got it to watch for the first time. I'm jealous because it was great. You'll have a great time.
I'll go. I'll start that soon then. The first season was good, so no reason not to go and watch it.
So, Richie, let's do our scores on the doors. What do you give the Watchmen graphic novel out of 10?
I don't have any other graphic novels to compare it to, but as an experience, on the whole, and what it did for me I'm going to give it a solid. I preferred it to. I'm going to get an 8.5.
Good score. Good strong score. And what about the film?
The film, 8.
Okay, yeah.
That's interesting.
I think that's, to be honest, I think that's pretty much where I sit on there. I think they both get an 8 for me. They're both really good. I grew up reading comics. I think the closest thing I could compare Watchmen to, or like...
Yeah, but you can't compare Watchmen to Garfield, can you?
No, but is the Punisher, because I was always into the Punisher. And I think like it's kind of got that kind of gritty, gravelly, like deprived kind of feel to it, and that was probably the thing I could compare it to the most. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I'll give them both an 8 because it was quite similar across the board, and I enjoyed seeing it come to life as well. So
it's one of the best adaptations from a book to a film I've ever seen, I think.
Well, I was about to say that, most definitely for me, and also I don't think that we'll find a better adaptation if we did another 100 of these, which is quite interesting. So Gareth has ruined our podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is our final podcast because we're never going to have another one.
And Gareth, and what are your scores?
I'm genuinely, I genuinely have to give, the Watchmen, the book, the graphic novel, a 10, just for how much it's entertained me on a yearly basis. Having watched the film today, which I found really entertaining, could I watch this film once a year, every year, with the same level of passion and enjoyment? No. Because I'm a comic book fan and a graphic novel fan. So just to balance it out between you two, I'm afraid I'm going to give the film, the book 10 and the film 7.5.
I think that's still a fair pointing.
That's a strong score. Yeah.
Still a
There
strong
you go.
score.
That sounded better. Strong score.
Yeah, it's a strong score for someone who's as passionate about the book, especially.
Well, because I'm not a complete comic book nerd. Because if I was a complete comic book nerd, it would have been like 5.5 versus 10.
Versus 11.2.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Ritchie, have we decided what we're doing for our next episode?
No, we haven't. But if you want to follow us and you want to come and see any other episodes, we are on Spotify. We are on Google Podcasts. In fact, just type in "Adapted to Screen." I haven't got the website up there, but Adapted to Screen. No, we haven't
Facebook,
got
Twitter.
Website,
not yet, but Facebook and Twitter. Put Adapted to Screen, and you'll see us on there. Anything else you want to add, Ritchie, before we start?
No, I'm done.
All right, well, from me...
This has been a pleasure. Thank you, Gareth, for joining us, by the way.
No worries. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. This was fun.
Gareth, as I was telling Ritchie, you're probably most famous for being Macca on Coronation Street. Have you got any plans to go back, or is your character in jail? Is your character
my
dead?
character
is your character living on the Costa del Sol?
No, the good thing in any soap opera apparently is if your character is not dead, there is hope always. So he is not dead, he's in prison, so there is hope always. But I'm quite happy to move on to other things too.
And is that where you got the Alcatraz top?
Yeah.
And how long is your character, Macca, your character, isn't it? How long is Macca serving?
Do you know what? Genuinely, when I read that he was going to prison, when I got my script through before the episode aired, and I read that he would get caught and he would go to prison, I started Googling, how long did you get for an attempted escape? Because I was like, how long before they might write me back in? Do I have to wait 2 years, 5 years, or 10? So it's always up to the writers, isn't it? Because they can always just go, yeah, he got off on a technicality, he's out.
Yeah, of course,
whenever they want.
Yeah. Oh well. Have you got anything? I know you're doing your.
I'm doing it. I've got something on the horizon for a TV company, but it's a very small part, and I got about 5 lines. But I'm really excited. I'm filming it on March the 24th, I think, and I can't wait. So I'm quite excited.
So from me, Ritchie and Gareth, thanks very much for listening, and come back and listen to us next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.